All right, we're live, and hello, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. I'm Dr. Rob Kiltz, and we're sharing just conversations with Dr. Kiltz, and it's meant to be about health and wellness, and it's about a fertile life. I'm a fertility specialist, and I'm here to help you on that journey, but it really is help and assistance on this fertile journey of life. Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. A beautiful Sunday. I'm in upstate New York, cold. I think it's in the 0-degree range, but it's clear and sunny. You're down in Ocala, Florida. Is that right?
Correct. We are actually having a cold spell too this week. So I'm not used to that, given that I basically lived in Miami for the most part. I wasn't used to this. Is like my first winter here, but it's nice. It's a nice change. I like it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a nutritionist, but why don't you tell us a story? I think you'd probably be more accurate than I would be.
Sure. So I'm a professor at Miami-Dade College in nutrition. I'm a certified exercise physiologist with the American College for Sports Medicine. I'm also a certified personal trainer. But like my academic background, I have a PhD in exercise physiology with a minor in nutrition. And before that, I completed my bachelor's and my master's in nutrition and dietetics. I'm a licensed dietitian. And mainly right now between teaching at Miami-Dade and content creation, that's filling up most of my time. So I'm also a content creator on YouTube, Instagram, all those social media platforms, because I enjoy the process of learning while sharing what I'm learning with everybody.
And so what's your inspiration that brought you into this field of nutrition and counseling and coaching and exercise physiology?
Where should I start? Basically everything that could go wrong, from acne, that was the first thing. Acne, and then, not being able to follow a diet and get fit without sacrificing energy and mental health, and then anxiety, panic attacks, depression. Yeah, the whole thing, everything.
So you personally suffered, is that it?
Say that again.
You personally suffered was the impetus to move to the next level.
That's usually how we stumble upon carnivore diets, right? Because the main narrative is not bad. What I was taught in nutrition school and in my PhD, it was never about what I'm sharing with the world right now. It was always about eat a mainly plant-based diet. Fruits and vegetables are important. Protein, it doesn't matter where you get it from. Plant sources are equivalent to animal sources. So like, unless something happens where, or you want to improve yourself and you're not okay with just being average, you want to optimize, that is when you start hitting that wall and you realize, I'm applying the theory, but the practice doesn't match what the theory tells me I'm supposed to expect. And that is how everybody, I think, in the carnivore community, or, keto, paleo, people who are going back to our ancestral diets, I think pretty much everybody has a story for the most part, or they know somebody very close to them that has had a transformation and that has kind of convinced them to go down that route.
So in your teaching, so you spend a lot of time in class teaching or online teaching or however it is. How do you share whichever you think is the most important story of today?
I give them both. I give them both sides. We have to go by the textbook, but at the same time, I share with them the other studies that aren't in the textbook, because oftentimes textbook information is like 20 years outdated. That's how long it takes to update those textbooks. And so there are basics that don't change, like, carbohydrates, proteins, the macronutrients, things like that. That's basic stuff that we have to go over. And they learn about all those things in a recorded lecture. And then when we meet, it's all discussion. It's all Q&A. It's all about understanding there are two sides to two main schools of thought in nutrition, and I give them everything basically.
And how in general are they accepting, or those that you're coaching or teaching? I'm assuming there's the both sides to your sharing. It's coaching
Yeah,
one-on-one or group coaching, and then the teaching part of it, and then obviously the blogging part of it. Tell us a little bit about your how you participate and practice in those different areas.
sure. Um, they're preceptive, because this is their first nutrition course, so it's not like they have preconceived notions. The only thing I think that people are resistant with is if they are in it for, not eating an animal. I think once you come across people who have been brainwashed by that movement with cherry picked information that really isn't mainly focused towards human health, it's mainly focused towards the human animal suffering and animal cruelty, which by the way is great. Nobody is advocating for that, but yeah, it's mainly I think the vegan movement of people who follow that tend to have very strong feelings whereby there's just like that, like the only thing that they believe is right, and anything you say they're going to counter that. I think that's the only, but I mean, I almost never, they're allowed movement, but as a matter of fact they're a very small minority, like as a percentage of the population. I see that more on like social media, the social media arguments,
It's
but
political.
not in school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
what about your thoughts, and maybe you could tell us specifically about the dangers of a plant-based diet, herbivore, essentially. If we're just, it's sort of, I always say there's only three diets: herbivore, omnivore, and carnivore.
Yeah.
That's really divides it into what you eat, because there's so many different things within all of that. And do you have any comments and thoughts on, okay, what about a plant-based diet
Yeah.
leads to the disease, and what are the diseases that we're talking about that you have found is important to share?
So students of mine reach out to me after trying a carnivore diet, and their anxiety is gone, their psoriasis is gone, their depression is gone, they're dropping weight easily. Um, the vitiligo goes away, which those are things that we never really thought about in terms of nutrition and that impacting those autoimmune conditions, right? So things that you never even would have thought about are being improved by diet, by going back to that ancestral diet. With regards to plant-based diets, I shared something this morning or yesterday on my Instagram. The Smithsonian magazine had an article about how 84% of vegans, which are people who are only herbivores, right? They're only eating plant foods. 84% of them quit within 1 year, and 30% of them don't last. I think it's like a third don't last beyond the first 3 months. And mainly, one of the driving reasons for that is their declining health. Your health starts to rapidly decline, which makes total sense because when you exclude animal foods, there are a lot of nutrients that are either exclusively found in animal foods or they are found in much larger amounts in animal foods, right? I think there are like 14. I did a video on my YouTube channel, 13 nutrient deficiencies that you start to accumulate on a vegan diet. And I forgot to add one more. I should have made 14 nutrients, which is choline. That's an additional one. But iron, it's not like you can't get iron from plant foods, but you would have to eat a lot of carbs in order to get enough iron. And then the form of iron in plant foods is non-heme for the most part. It's different than the more biologically active form of iron in animal foods, which is heme iron. We said choline, zinc. It's not that, again, same as iron. You can't get enough on a plant-based diet without paying the price of very high carbohydrate consumption. What else? Omega-3s, the DHEAs. It's very difficult to optimize for your health on a vegan diet without having to supplement on a consistent basis. And you can only supplement with the nutrients that nutrition as a science has discovered so far. Nutrition as a science, like the modern history of nutrition science, it's very recent. The first vitamin was isolated in 1926. It was vitamin B1. And then in the 30s, vitamin C. Vitamin K2, like in the last maybe 30 years or less. So we're constantly learning new things. Taurine, it was only in 1998 that we discovered that taurine is an essential nutrient. Well, you can only get it from animal foods. So you can only supplement with the nutrients that science has isolated and discovered and realized is essential, and that there are supplements for. But then the other question is, how do you know what is the ratio between the nutrients? Because nutrients work together. They're not working in isolation, right? So simply taking an iron supplement is probably the worst thing you can do, because it's going to mess your copper and zinc balance, because all of those metals, they compete with one another. So taking only iron supplements is going to offset the copper balance and function and the zinc balance and function in your body. So it's I'm not like resisting progress, if you want to call progress, by not killing animals. It's not that. It's just that it is way too early to think that we can manufacture fake meat and to think that we can just supplement with all those things, because we don't know what is the perfect recipe for health. And just looking at what is happening with people who are going on a mainly plant-based diet, by the way, included myself, we see almost always like 84% of people are ex-vegans or ex-plant-based, right? And there's a reason for that.
So what are your thoughts on the science of supplements? And I've always wondered whether or not a real science of supplements and vitamins is really driven by profits from pharmaceutical and drug companies and nutraceutical companies. All of us in some way are really, we want to believe the science, but maybe the science isn't really true.
Yeah. I agree. You can't tease out the actual effect of a lot of supplements from the financial incentive behind it, because it's kind of like when you have a lot of supplement companies that are funding studies on that certain vitamin or nutrient. So now you have a lot of studies being done on a certain nutrient and not enough studies being done on whole foods, because there's more profit in selling more pills, right? As opposed to just real whole foods. And people also, by the way, I noticed that a lot of people do prefer to just tell me what supplement I can take, or is there a supplement that can get rid of some, because it's easier, right? You don't have to go through the pain of change, those growing pains that we have to go through in order to better our health. So it's driven by the marketplace. People are attracted to just taking pills. It's driven by the interest that supplement companies have for studying those supplements. And so now you have an imbalance in the research, you have an imbalance in the literature. And so this is why you don't hear as much about the benefits of red meat,
And what about the peer-reviewed journals and all the scientists that are sitting on the boards accepting or rejecting a peer-reviewed article? I'm wondering about the bias that they may even have, and wondering what funding they're getting from some of these companies.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And even sometimes you can't catch it in the declaration, right? In the financial, conflict of interest or financial declaration, you don't sometimes catch it. You have to do a little bit extra digging. No, but I understand. I think if you are working within the system, like in a university or in a hospital system, it's always harder. And I think you probably have a little bit more experience with that. It's harder to say what we're saying, let's go back to eating the one food that our species evolved eating for 99.99% of our existence as a species here on Earth. But yeah, just because also something is peer reviewed does not, like here's the real thing. Here's the problem with nutrition science, peer-reviewed nutrition science. It's very difficult to get people, give them red meat, or carnivore-based diet, and make sure they're eating it for years and years and years and years, and follow them in a controlled environment. So in other words, have a controlled trial, right? We can't even do randomized controlled trial. You can't do like blind testing because they know they're eating meat. So you can't even do that. So
well, it could be fake meat or real meat.
Right. That's right. Yeah, you could do that. That's a good one. Yeah. So there you go. It's very difficult to conduct that kind of study for a very long period of time and then look for what happened to these people. And this is why, and I understand that it's hard, but this is why we are relegated to these large scale but epidemiological or correlational or observational studies, where the main tool they're using, which is, by the way, it's a questionnaire that they use, and I used that when I did my master's degree. It's called the Food Frequency Questionnaire, or the FFQ. And that tool is inherently flawed. I mean, there's a whole body of literature that exists just to criticize the Food Frequency Questionnaire and those epidemiological studies, right? So, but that's what we're using in order to check for diet and disease. We're asking people if they ate pizza that has pepperoni on it, and if they say yes, we consider them meat eaters. And so, yeah, of course, somebody who's eating burgers and pizza is going to most likely suffer health consequences. We are coming across the healthy user effect, which means that when people are reporting eating a lot of meat, oftentimes most people that are eating a lot of meat, they're eating them with junk food. They're not eating, grass-fed, high-quality meat with the absence of all the other things that go along with it, the fries, the sodas. So we're not controlling for that. The smoking behaviors, the lack of exercise that tend to go along with what we call the James Dean effect, right? People who are just, not really living a healthy lifestyle. So until they do this study where they get plant-based or vegan randomized control trial, get the plant-based and the vegans, and get the carnivores that are eating, real whole foods, put them somewhere for 6 months. Ideally, we need 2 years, but I'm just trying to be a little realistic. Put them in a lab for 6 months. Make sure they're eating those foods. That would be the ideal study that would finally kind of give us the answer.
But there are some studies out there. In the 20s, Stephenson. What was?
You mean metabolic, or are you talking about the keto research?
Carnivore, because he talked about the Inuits, and then he was placed in a hospital for. I mean, the truth be said is there is plenty of evidence to support this, and I know you're telling me the story how well you felt on this, but it is one of those things that's just so hard to believe, right? I'm going to tell you a story that you're not going to believe. Yeah. And because really, what is the purpose of food in our society?
Yeah.
I would say it's part of the party. It's part of our amusement. It's not, we don't understand food as our sustenance for energy. Is that kind of how you would put it? How do you find that people are sort of, why they're resistant, why they're accepting of these things?
Yeah, first, you're right. I completely forgot about Stephenson when he spent time with the Inuits, and then he was so convinced about that, came back and actually did it. I think he did it for a year, right? Under the
a year or two. I can't remember, a year at least. Yes.
Yeah. You're right about that. I should do a video on that just so that, more people hear about this. So yes, I think that food is so, it's not me thinking that, it's science really that has proven that you destroy your dopamine receptors, which allows the dopamine producing feeling like, if you destroy your dopamine receptors in your brain, you can't feel the effects of dopamine, right? You can't feel the pleasure of dopamine, feeling motivated. So it's not just me thinking that food is addictive. Food is scientifically proven to be highly addictive, not only in rat studies, but also in overweight and obese people. Because you put them in a scan and you look at the dopamine and D2 receptor activity in their brain, and you see they have massive destruction of D2 receptors, similarly to that found in users of hard drugs like cocaine. So you look at the brain of somebody who has obesity versus the brain of somebody who has been using hard drugs. And while the hard drug user is going to have more extensive destruction of dopamine receptors called the D2 receptors, the overweight and obese, especially the more obese you are, the more D2 receptor destruction you have. But it's similar to that hard drug user's brain, only slightly to a lesser extent. So yeah, people are addicted, and you have a lot of special interests like companies who have a vested interest in you believing that you need balance in your life. You need intuitive eating. You know, you need to eat from all the food groups, and you need to treat yourself with those foods because, you know, food is fun and love and happiness. And it could be that, but it doesn't have to be addictive. You can share a good meal with and have a good experience with sharing that meal, but it doesn't have to be the most addictive food possible.
Sarah Zaldivar, welcome, PhD, nutritionist, coach, lifestyle motivator. How do people find you, by the way?
So you can find me on YouTube, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, Instagram at Dr.Sarah with an H .Zaldivar. It's fairly easy to find me. Facebook, same thing, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. Yeah, everywhere.
And we'll have a link on our YouTube and Facebook here to find Sarah. What about the vegetarian versus the vegan? You're from Lebanon, you were telling about. My grandparents are all from Italy. And so we're in that Mediterranean environment, and it's a high plant-based, but plenty of meat and things like that. You know, we have these comparisons, but maybe you could sort of talk a little bit about maybe the differences and how to explain these differences to people between the vegetarian, Mediterranean, maybe a little bit.
Right. So a vegetarian diet, you have 5 different types of vegetarian diets. The one thing in common between those 5 different types of vegetarian diets would be not eating red meat. They all skip red meat. But you have, let's say, a lacto-ovo vegetarian who eats no animal foods, but includes milk and eggs. You've got pescatarian, who's a vegetarian who eats no animal food except fish. You've got the main, I guess, the one that really is the most plant-based would be vegan, excludes 100% all of animal foods, so not even fish, nothing like that. Yeah, and then I think you have like lacto vegetarian, which same, again, no animal foods except dairy. So you've got a lot of different types of vegetarianism. The one that is most impactful on your health would be a vegan diet, because it removes every single source of animal food, and that means every single source of animal nutrition. Now, how does that compare to a Mediterranean diet or an Italian-based diet? It's not exactly the same because, for example, a Mediterranean diet, while it is mainly plant-based, you still consume fish, right? You still consume small amounts of red meat here and there. But I can tell you what I grew up eating a lot of salads, a lot of beans, you know, a lot of rice and beans. And then when we thought we wanted to transition to a healthier diet, it was like soy. We started to try to eat, you know, soy and tofu instead of red meat. So it's mainly high carb, mainly plant-based, and doesn't really have a lot of animal foods in it. And now with an Italian cuisine, I guess, I think everybody knows, right? It's high carb, but maybe you can share with us how much that has in common with a vegan or a vegetarian diet.
Well, I think for growing up wise anyway, it was pasta, bread, salad, vegetables, fruit, lots of fruit. I grew up in Los Angeles. We had fruit trees everywhere. As much as you want fruit, and things like that. But it was also tortillas and burgers and pizza. But pasta was like the foundation, which is all wheat essentially. And ultimately there wasn't much fat in the diet. We cooked with it, but we didn't cook with lard. It was olive oil, corn oil. That's how we grew up doing it. Now, a real Mediterranean Italian, those certainly, I think they're kind of similar, the pasta part, but maybe they cook with more real animal fat. And I know for myself, I suffered from bowel problems and migraines as a kid. And then it went on to arthritis, psoriasis, eczema, kidney stones, continued migraines, hemorrhoids, bowel bleeding, probably IBS, but it was never diagnosed. And then I know for myself, my patients shared with me the idea that paleo got them pregnant. I couldn't get them pregnant. And then I started, well, what even is a paleo diet? But I loved, because I was doing Weight Watchers and Atkins to lose weight and exercising like crazy to be healthy and look good and all this crazy, stupid shit. But it was a lot of work. And then I learned about paleo, and then I started really researching. And then I found carnivore, fasting, and now essentially for the last 10 years, I'm 66 soon. For over 10 years, I've been doing carnivore, 1 meal a day, and really minimal, almost no alcohol. I cut down almost to no exercise, and I eat fatty ribeye steak with butter and salt every day. It is primarily my boringest nutritional human solution, I call it. I hate the word diet. Should be completely kicked out. And I eat ice cream that I make almost every single day. Cream and eggs, a little bit of sugar, and a little bit of vanilla. And to me, no fiber, no fruits. And the thing that finally, so I learned from someone like you that vegetables are carbohydrates, and fruit and fiber is a carbohydrate. And we thought lettuce was like water. And so, I'm learning from you and others in this, and I know that the carnivore place that we talk about is such a narrow window that people just want to run from, and it's boring.
Yeah, it's I get it. It's a lot. Like, even for someone like me and you, we are in the field. It probably took us a while to wrap our heads around, getting to carnivore. And it wasn't like I went from eating normal to eating carnivore. I went through phases. First, it was paleo. Then it was keto. Then it was, eventually, after a long time, it was carnivore. So, and every stage took years, and it wasn't like overnight, because for me, I think my education slowed me down. Somebody who doesn't have my background, you might be more convinced quicker, but somebody who has gone, who's a dietitian, who's in the field, has been brainwashed course after course, study after study. The vegetables are associated, the whole grains are associated, but they have all that kind of stuff. So it took me a very long time to finally get the answers that would convince me, because I had a lot of questions and I needed them all to be answered before I was like, okay, well, that makes sense.
And where do you see your next level of sharing and creating that will help sort of build the platform around what you're doing?
Yeah, see, it's not like I set out to be a carnivore doctor. It wasn't like my goal is to talk about the one thing nobody wants to talk about, as a small YouTube channel. That's not the best thing. That's not the best way to go about it. But like I love a lot of things. For me, the nutrition part is simply because I'm obsessed with anti-aging. And by the way, I cannot believe you're 66 years old. You do not even remotely look 66. It's shocking. And again, another testament to the anti-aging effects of red meat. So,
well, yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing that and that's why I'm like a little kid in a candy store that found like the Holy Grail, and that this is it. Although I tell people a little bit of sugar, cake, cookies, or candy from time to time, but of any frequency is deadly. I do French fries from time to time. When we call ourselves X, Y, or Z, it's not fair to say that you probably are doing it. I mean, we're in a world of an amusement park, and I go out with my friends and family members and new acquaintances all the time. And for me, it really is. I call it the baby's plan, and I share this. And I'm getting rid of the word diet. We're going to put nutritional solution, but bacon, eggs, butter, beef, ice cream, intermittent feasting, 1 meal a day, and salt. I mean, that is the game changer, in my opinion. And I couldn't believe when I read this stuff that I'm finding. It's like, come on, it can't be as simple as this. And we have so many patients that follow similar. I'll say if you're either doing carnivore, and I don't even like the word keto, but it's kind of the phrase that we're using today. If it's carnivore keto or just a straight kind of a Mediterranean keto, but I tell people to cook carbs really well to limit the lectins, the oxalates, get rid of the fiber. And if you could add butter, cream, or lard or tallow the best way. Do you have any insight or recommendations where you direct people to?
Yeah, so it's very similar to my YouTube channel has all that information. So, people can check it out. It's Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, Sarah with an H. So very easy to find me. And there's all of, my thoughts about all of these different things, but you're right. Mainly animal foods, ideally grass-fed beef. The fattier the meat, the better. And I believe for your audience who's interested in fertility, the more good fats from ribeye steaks, the better. Or if you're going to do ground beef, go with the fattier cuts. Absolutely. Higher fat is definitely great to boost your hormones, because that's how you make your sex hormones, right? You need fat you need cholesterol. So I agree with everything you said. And I want also to say you're so right about labeling. People tell us, like, people attach the label to us. You're a carnivore doctor. I just talk about what I eat and what I think is the healthiest thing. And it just so happens after everything I went through with my health, after my experience, telling people what to eat, after seeing my clients and my patients, my educated opinion and experienced opinion ultimately got us to this inconvenient truth that maybe it's just meat, that might be the healthiest human food. So, but yeah, we shouldn't label ourselves. And if studies show up and prove us wrong, I know I have like no qualms about just changing overnight and saying, well, I don't think this is right anymore because those studies are showing that, or my experience has shown me that after these, it's fine. We're learning. We're always learning, and we're just sharing what we're learning with the world. That's all.
I tell everyone the number one is you. You're the only scientific experiment that matters. Every scientific study you read is biased, and you better believe it's not telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's the truth as each and every one of us believe. And so I believe a plant-based diet is the best. And there was a really good study, the A to Z study. I saw it on YouTube, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. That's the one, because it was about Atkins, They had a vegan in there. So I can't remember what the A to Z meant, but basically Atkins got the top line in success but most studies, people are looking to lose weight. And I'm wondering what your thought is about being skinny or fat. If you're just skinny or fat, and you eat like a carnivore or a herbivore or an omnivore, does the weight matter?
Yes and no. So excess body fat is an inflammatory organ, right? So your fat cells, they don't just sit there doing nothing. The more fat cells you accumulate on your frame, especially above what is healthy, the more inflammatory markers they're releasing into your bloodstream. There is that. So I know there's a movement now to make it seem as if people at every single weight are equally healthy, and that's just factually incorrect. One of the best things you can do for your body is drop any excess body fat. There's another extreme, people who cannot gain weight. They want to gain weight. They want to put on muscle and some body fat. Some women, they can't get their periods. They don't have enough body fat on them. That's also unhealthy. So there's like a sweet spot. And for most people, that sweet spot is looking pretty shredded for most people. Like it looks great, it looks fine for maybe you're not going to look as if you're competing in bodybuilding competitions, but you can be pretty lean and healthy. So I think it's that, not being too underweight, but also not having that excess body fat. And then you have people who are at optimal weight. You look at them and they look amazing, but also they do not necessarily, they're not necessarily healthy, because if you're 20 years old and you're eating all the junk food and you still look amazing because you're 20, eventually it's going to catch up with you, right? Eventually, just looking at somebody's body weight does not automatically tell you whether they are healthy or not.
Yeah, I've been studying this for a while, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that you're obese because you eat a high carb diet. Our measurement of inflammatory markers are all related only to the lectins, the oxalates, the phytates, and the chemicals that cause the inflammation. So we're biased to believe fat is the cause. So that's our biggest conundrum in this. And as I've been practicing and looking at this more, I'm convinced fat is the best genetic predisposition that we've ever developed, because we're built to get fat, and those that get fat easily historically were the survivors and the reproducers. I always say no one wants a skinny bitch. Sorry for my language. Fat is fertile fuel for the Ferrari, because if you look at bears and many other animals, they get fat, they get pregnant, and they hibernate for long periods of time. So I've recently sort of been changing that and looking at it and wondering, because there's such a prejudice against obesity in the medical and scientific world, we're trying to solve something by simply losing weight. And I think we're missing the mark here, that in fact, maybe the genetics to get fat are the best, but because we're so judgmental. So that's just kind of an interesting thing that I've been looking at and wondering about. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so here's my thought. My thought on that is that what is important, is training people to access their fat stores. So when you put somebody on a ketogenic diet, they eventually keto adapt, right? It takes, let's say, 2 weeks. For some people, it takes 6 weeks. It never really ends. I mean, there are studies that show athletes who are continuously keto adapting and getting better and better at using fat as their main energy source, even after 2 years. So it's a process that never ends, but you really start feeling the effects of keto adaptation after, let's say, 3 days. For most people, 7 days to 14 days.
So go ahead, keep on going. I'm sorry.
So if somebody is overweight or obese, what I would want to do is train them to be able to tap into their fat stores. So the thing is with obesity and overweight is when you become unable to shift fuel sources. You're so reliant on carbs and sugars. That's why you're so addicted. Every 2 to 3 hours, you need a hit of carbohydrates as an energy source. So you have forgotten that when you were born, you were mainly keto adapted. If you were breastfed, for as long as you're breastfed, you're on a ketogenic diet, right? And so, but the moment we wean our babies off, we start giving them non-ketogenic foods, right? We start giving them the applesauce and the bananas and things like that. So right away, we start forgetting, our bodies forget how to tap into fat as a main energy source that we should mainly be using to fuel our brains, to fuel our bodies. And so here's what happens. In order to improve someone's health, you want them to get keto adapted. And as a side effect of keto adaptation, they will naturally lose the excess body fat and their inflammation is going to drop. Because now, by the way, even on a lean person, somebody, you look at them, they're like, wow, they're so fit, they're lean. Even on a lean person, they have close to 40,000 to 100,000 calories worth of stored fat versus only 2,000 calories worth of stored carbs in the form of glycogen in your liver and muscles. So even in a lean person, look how much more body fat you have stored already. So the trick is to be able to tap into that, to be able to use that as your main energy source. And this is where keto or carnivore, any very, very low carb diet can improve our health so much.
What's your thoughts on fasting?
I love it. And I think you should.
What is the definition of fasting?
Fasting is just compressing all of your foods within a narrow period of time. So whatever calories you're going to eat for the day, eat them in a compressed time period. And that means you're not eating for the vast majority of the day, depending. There are different types of fasting. For some people, they do, they'll eat within a 4-hour window. Some people, they'll eat within a 6-hour window. So it really depends on, yeah. You do that?
1 hour window.
1 hour. Oh, so OMAD, 1 meal a day.
1 meal a day, which I'm curious. What historically, what did our ancestors? How often did they eat 50, 100, 200,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Is it 1 meal a day or far less?
Yeah.
It was the likelihood.
I think that's great. I did that for a while. It worked for me. I even did like full body, full day fasts, and then I would do OMAD. The only thing for me is that I also do bodybuilding. So I lift heavy weights. So I need even more protein in order to put as much muscle and, to progress with my lifts. And so for that, that's why I went back to eating more meals. But even with that, I still do intermittent fasting. But I don't force it. Like, I think that's the key. Yeah.
So, it's interesting because I've come up with a concept that the body only burns fat and it never burns sugar for energy. And insulin resistance does not exist.
Okay.
Okay. So now remember, we're in a world of nutrition with one paradigm, but we're suggesting another one. Correct?
True.
Now to be open to the next level, which is I'm finding, and maybe as a nutritional scientist that you have a lot more knowledge than I do, but I couldn't figure out why the body would burn sugar sometimes and fat the other times. And I bet it's not true because everyone has always in their cells short chain, medium chain, long chain fatty acids, always. So there's always acetyl-CoA and ketones in the cytoplasm and the mitochondria. Why would you use sugar?
Right.
Why? And so again, I asked the question, but because until we say, well, let me look at that, we're too quick in our science, because I know this is all of us, that no way. Because keto has been labeled as a shift from burning sugar to burning fat, but maybe what it is only a low glucose environment. Now you've lowered your total caloric intake in the form of sugar and proteins. Mm-hmm. And that's why fasting is our historic nature. This 4 to 6, 8 hour window of eating is not natural because what were you carrying around? Nothing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of the part. And insulin resistance, this is the interesting part. I would say that if you're eating a carbohydrate diet, your bowels are always full of carbs. As long as the bowel bag is always full of carbs, that means you're secreting sugar in your bloodstream all the time.
Fermentation.
As long as you're secreting glucose into your bloodstream, insulin always goes up.
Yeah.
And the only function of insulin is to convert amino acids and simple sugars in the liver to fat, which is not our idea of insulin, is it?
Yeah, it has so many different functions, but I think it's a great question you're asking.
I'm coming up with a hypothesis and theory.
Yeah.
And I already got the ideas that prove it, but it's our same problem in science. What are your most difficulties that you're finding in your scientific endeavor, in your research? And
the main thing is the confirmation bias, which is, I think everybody should Google what is the reticular activating system, or the RAS, right? The reticular activating system is that part of your brain that allows you to only see things that you deem to be relevant to you. In other words, like that's the part of your brain that allows for confirmation bias to happen, which is like when you buy a car, you've probably never seen it before, but after you buy it, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. It's not that it wasn't there before, it's just that now your RAS is triggered because now this car means something to you. So now you can actually pay attention to all of the other cars. Same thing happens in academia and in scientists. We have been told a certain narrative that, Kellogg's cereal is healthy for you, and that's the most important breakfast or meal of the day. So all these research studies have been done to kind of confirm what a lot of researchers already kind of thought might be true. Maybe, more plants, more whole grains, more fruits, this seems to be healthier, so let's do more of those studies. And more of those grants get funded, because they follow a narrative. So you can say, in order for me to get grant money to do my study, I'm going to say in my grant proposal, like, look at all these studies that show what I like, that it's in a similar vein, as opposed to proposing something completely new. Good luck getting a grant funded, right? And so that's the problem with nutrition science and science in general, is the confirmation bias of humans, because scientists are humans and they have those same biases as well. And another thing that kind of compounds that problem is that in academic institutions, it seems like everybody kind of goes with the flow as well, and it makes it harder to work outside of that and think outside the box, because all of your peers are all saying the same thing, and you can get attacked. I mean, I know this has happened to me, and now even more, that more people are learning about me. People in the field, they want to attack you for daring to question a narrative that they so wholeheartedly believe in, even though clearly it's not working for them.
So what's your method of moving forward and keeping on this track and this journey?
So yeah, I'm an eternal learner. I have all of my life to continue what I'm working on, and my main goal is I don't want to die. I am passionate about anti-aging science, and I want to achieve what if you know about Dr. Aubrey de Grey, he is like the main researcher for Sense Foundation, this foundation that main goal is to cure aging as a disease. There are so many, by the way, of those like organizations and startup companies that are doing the research to look at aging as a driving disease that drives really all the other chronic diseases, because most other chronic diseases spring up as the aging process takes hold. So for me, I want to achieve the escape velocity. What is escape velocity? So Aubrey de Grey, that I was referring to earlier, according to his research, there is a 50-50 chance that we might achieve escape velocity in the next 15 years. What does that mean? That means that there's a 50-50 chance that the anti-aging research is going to allow us to have the tools to prolong our lives, have the treatments, enough treatments to prolong our lives long enough so that more treatments come, and we keep using those treatments to prolong our lifespan enough to the point where we no longer need those continuous treatments and aging has been cured. In other words, if you're hell-bent on that, and you want to prolong your lifespan, there is a 50-50 chance it could happen in your lifetime. Now, we don't know, obviously, we don't know how the science is going to go, but I'm keeping a very, very close eye on that. And that's why you see anti-aging stuff on my channel. But for me, diet is just one of the tools I use for anti-aging. So for me, that's just one thing I use. It's not like I'm obsessed with diet. I have goals. I want to do so many things. I have so many ideas, companies I want to found, like all those things. And this is a stepping stone that's going to get me there and get more people interested in this topic, so that the more people are interested, the more research is being done, the more I also benefit. So
cool.
That is.
So what would you say is the focus of most of your clients that come to you? What are they looking for, and how do you approach that? The majority.
Yeah, I feel like, well, right now, by the way, I don't take one-on-one clients. Sometimes I do, but I don't advertise for it. And I generally will, like, on a regular basis, tell people I'm not taking online clients at the moment, because I want to focus on what I'm doing right now with just growing my brand as much as possible. So what I have found is that people have played with a vegan plant-based herbivore or just ate what they thought was healthy, and when that doesn't work, that is when they discover what I'm talking about, because you kind of have to have this personal experience, because otherwise there's no reason to go down the research, because there's a lot of research and a lot of questions that you need to answer for you to be able to finally accept a keto carnivore diet as really being the healthiest human diet.
What other things do you incorporate in that? And you said that your goal and what you're sharing in your YouTube and Instagram and things like that. What is the primary focus of what your goal is to share with the world?
My primary focus is to help people see the other side of the science that isn't making the mainstream news. Right? That they're not talking about the studies that show that beef fat actually lowers risk for cancers. They're not talking about those studies. They're just talking about the narrative that is kind of accepted. Because, there's not enough people basically shedding light on this whole body of science that exists, but yet nobody's talking about it. I think there's fear involved, like people in institutions, they don't want to be, the person that's recommending just meat, because you will be, you will be attacked in a way, or, well, we're not going to get into that, but I'm sure right? Yeah, you too. Yeah, exactly.
And it all depends on where you are at in your career or what your driving force is. But I always say pain is the best thing, and pain and death are the two best things that ever been gifted to life, because it keeps you motivated to move. And if you don't have pain, there's no gain. Tell us a little bit about your exercise routine and your workout and what you do on a regular basis.
Yeah, so I do also document a lot of these things on my Instagram, but mainly I lift weights, upper body, lower body, split routine every day. I don't choose a recovery day. It normally happens on one of these days you can't make it. And so it often, like that recovery day, life throws it at you. So I don't plan for it. And I do sprints and runs. I have a treadmill. It's right here, right next to me. This is my little office here. So I was like, yeah. Say that again. Wait, say that again.
That's cool. That's
yeah.
Everything right there. Nice.
It's the best. It's the best machine I ever bought. And people always are like, you know, why buy it? You're never going to use it. Well, no, that's the single most used thing that I've ever bought.
How do you commit yourself to these things? And what is your other spiritual practice or motivational practices that you bring to the table?
I think you got to have a goal. You got to have a purpose. And for me, I have a very big dream that I want to make into a reality. And it might be a little crazy. If you do some digging on and read my interviews, you'll know what it is. But that is my goal. And I feel that I wasn't, you know, put in, I wasn't given like opportunities growing up in Lebanon and not really having a lot of money. I wasn't given opportunities to grow that thing that I want to do. And so now I'm going to buy myself time and I'm going to do it anyway. And so that keeps me.
Say what that goal, what is that goal?
So it's basically being an entertainer. I want to be in music, dancing, singing, that kind of stuff. And so for me, I mean, I've taken, obviously, like when I grew up, I put myself through, you know, vocal lessons, all that kind of stuff. But but I definitely haven't been like trained classically from a young age and all those things. And I feel like, why? I can do it. It doesn't matter. And I want my life to show that it doesn't matter what your circumstances were. Your dream was put in you for a reason. And if you didn't have the goods ready to make it happen, you wouldn't have the urge. And so I feel like it's kind of like what haunts me, and that's what I really, and I love it because it keeps me driven and it keeps me doing everything I do. And again, that's why I do what I do, because I want to be in the best physical shape, mental shape, because I know what it's going to take. And it's probably going to take way more than what I think even now. But you know, I'm going to have to be an optimal peak performer in order to achieve those things.
Where do people find a little bit more about your goals and your vision?
I don't really like to talk about it much. I feel like because it's so far-fetched, you know, given that, you know, I'm not doing it right now. I'm doing something completely different. That's why I feel like I did give an interview one time for Voyage MIA. It's a Miami magazine that they reached out to me. And what that day I was so inspired. I was like, I'm going to be the best performer in the world. But you know, I'm happy it's out there because I think it's going to be like on the record. You know, it's like,
cool.
See, I always knew. And then when it happens, it's like, this isn't chance. This isn't luck. I worked for that. I chose this path.
So Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Yes. And then you have a website, obviously, which is
DrSarahZaldivar.com. Yeah. It's very basic on my website. I don't have like, I mean, I made it so that it's presentable, but I don't have anything on it, you know, like blogs or anything just yet. I'm mainly focused like YouTube, Instagram right now. But eventually, I wanted the domain, you know, saving it because eventually it's going to grow, obviously.
So you have a dream and a vision that you're creating while you're sharing your expertise and knowledge about how nutrition will solve and eliminate so many diseases. We've had so many people joining us today. Any comments on just one from Erica on adrenal issues? You know, maybe you could comment about that, or just sort of bloating.
Bloating. Okay, so
what are your thoughts?
So is your audience mainly women, or is it both?
Oh, my audience is mainly women, but it's men and women. And it's mostly those that are looking towards their improving their fertility and their journey on having a baby, building a family.
So here's something that they might find interesting. I used to really have bad days when I would get my period. Really like just cramps, and you know, I'm trying to stick to my diet, but the moment I get my period, it's like that's it. I eat junk food, and then it takes me a while to pull myself out of that brain fog and that, you know, sugar addiction. And guess what the solution was? Red meat, basically. Or even if somebody is not like ready to go red meat, just zero fiber. Like It's really about not having an iota of fiber in your digestive system. And that means the day before and the day before, right? So like 2 days before you expect to get your period, 0 fiber, no popcorn, none of that stuff, not even just a little bit. That for me, I cannot even begin to tell you, like not losing a whole day, because I'm a type A. I'm always want to be productive, right? So not losing that one day is crucial. And then also, more importantly, that means I don't get to eat addictive foods, which then it takes me a while to pull myself out of it, because my brain has struggled with eating disorders, right? Another reason why carnivore is so amazing for me, I don't have those urges anymore. So
it's simple, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. So people look at it, and that's something that I always say. A carnivore diet appears to be very restrictive, but it feels so freeing on the inside, because you feel like there's no brain fog. You have the energy. And so it's gaining freedom. And then another, just with the adrenals, I have the most energy ever. So, I don't have an issue with adrenal glands. So, and people, especially when keto was starting to become more common and people were afraid it's going to mess up their thyroid and, oh, you need carbs. And that that did not happen with me. So I have more energy.
You agree there's no necessity for a carbohydrate in the human diet?
Oh, yeah. It's not an essential nutrient, unlike what we have been taught. Yeah.
What's your usual food for the day and your meals? And do you eat the same thing every day, or if you don't, what's your mix up? But
I don't have it right next to me. Do you know the company Carnivore Crisps?
No.
They're great. So they do dehydrated beef and all kinds of animal foods. I love it. I'll have that, for example, today, right after this interview, because I'm fasting. So I haven't eaten anything since last night, like really in the afternoon yesterday. So what I'll do, I'll have a little bit of that. It's a bag of beef ribeye that's desiccated. It's literally beef and salt. That's it, 2 ingredients. And then after that, I'll have ground beef. And then I'll have, I always have some chicken, like I like it in the crock pot. So I'll have some of that chicken topped with a ton of bacon on top. And that'll satisfy me.
And that's pretty much your every day, or do you switch it up? And what do you do when you go out?
I used to do fruits. And now I've noticed that just cutting out the fruits, because, in the carnivore community, the keto community, I think you may have come across the idea that fruits might not be as terrible for us as compared to veggies, just if you look at what they have. But here's what I've noticed: when I keep it, even if even that one bowl of fruit, I don't know, it just triggers cravings in me. And I've noticed that if I just eliminate those, so now that's what I'm doing, I feel so much better and so much more energy. So I'll keep you posted. I'm sure, like on YouTube, I'll keep everybody posted what eventually happens. But for now, I feel like not eating fruits is even better for me.
I think fruits are deadly. Plants are the predators and we're the prey. Plants don't want to be eaten, and neither does a cow. But a cow is not easy to kill, and a plant is. And so they kill us afterwards. That's their smart plan of life.
They have to have a self-defense mechanism similar to every single living organism.
I want to thank you for your time today on this beautiful Sunday, that you've allowed us to enter your home and share your beautiful, amazing ideas. So we're going to be looking for the successful, amazing entertainer, but scientist.
Don't say it out loud. I feel like this is my
But what I've learned is that what humans desire, you must imagine as if it is and share it with the world, because God doesn't want to keep a secret. And the more you share it, the more it will unfold. So again, everyone, thank you. Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, check out her, just Google her name and you'll find lots of great information. So God bless everyone. Stay tuned for more on Kiltz's conversations. Take care.